Hi beautiful. This right here, not a video I'm looking forward to filming at all, but I have to. So what you're looking at back there is my palette collection. I have my Pat McGrath palettes right here. You guys have seen those show up in every video, but when I started piling up my palettes right above those right there, I didn't have enough palettes to fill that shelf. As you can see, as my channel has continued to grow, I keep getting palettes to review for you and to show you, to give you my opinions on, to create looks with. And so now I have palettes not only all the way through, but I have palettes on top of palettes back there. And so I think it's time that we do a declutter video for the palettes specifically. I did do a declutter video for the rest of my makeup collection very recently, so if you want to watch that video, I will link it up there on the eye. But right now in this video we are going to do palettes only. The palettes that I declutter, I will be passing along to family and friends who are interested in them, and I do not intend on decluttering like half of my collection or like any percentage specifically. I'm just going to declutter the palettes that I know I don't get use out of, I will not get use out of in the future, and I will not need for future videos. There's a lot of palettes that I collect because I like the brand and I want to have all of them so I can show you comparisons when a new one comes out. And so there's a lot that I'm sure that I will keep. If you guys are excited for this palette declutter video, please give the video a thumbs up before you leave. If you're new to my channel, please don't leave without subscribing, and let's get started. Okay, so here are all of my palettes that we are about to put down on the floor. I prepared the floor, so I cover my carpet with my taco blankets, my flour tortilla blankets, because in case there's any eyeshadow spill. And then those two boxes right there are my tripod, and this is my lights. So these are all the palettes that I am about to go through and show you and tell you why I'm keeping or decluttering them, and I honestly don't think that I'll get rid of that many, but we shall see. I wanted to show you guys this right here. This is a Natasha Denona Triochrome Palette PR box. And of course I have a brand new Triochrome palette right there. I received this from Natasha a while back when they sent me their new eyeliner that was launching, and of course I already had tried the Triochrome palette because I did a review with a few looks on it, and so this is something that I do not need in my collection. And so I was waiting for this video to give one of you the opportunity to win this Natasha Denona Triochrome palette. At the end of the video I will say what you have to do in order to enter, so stay tuned for that. I'm not going to be decluttering any of my Huda Beauty Obsessions palettes because I need to keep them for rankings videos, but I will tell you which ones are my most favorite ones and my least favorite ones. I think my least favorite and the one that I would declutter is this Neon Obsessions right here, just because the mattes in this one are a little bit lackluster. These right over here are good, but I could honestly get more use out of them because they're not necessarily my favorites from the Huda line. We have this Neon Obsessions here that has really beautiful spring summer colors. I just don't get that much use out of it, but it's not a bad palette and it's a pretty unique color story. This one here is the Sand Haze. I don't love the formula of the shimmers in this one, but the mattes are pretty good. I think the only reason this one's not more special is because I already had these shades from Huda when this one came out. Purple Haze has a beautiful color story, but it is a shame that this matte purple right here is not super easy to work with, so I don't get to use this one as much as I would want to. Here's the Caramel Brown Obsessions. This one's a really nice warm color story. This color up here is absolute trash, but if you are into warm tone neutrals, this is a really nice palette to have. Toffee Brown has a really nice combination of shades. I like this color story quite a lot, but this is not my favorite formula on Huda Beauty Obsessions palettes. And then here is the Chocolates Brown Obsession, which has a beautiful color story. Again, I feel like the formula of the brown Obsession palettes from Huda, it's not my favorite formula in Obsessions palettes. It's not terrible, but you do have to work the shadows a little bit harder. This has a pretty color story, but honestly I don't use it that much. And then here are my favorite Obsessions palettes from Huda Beauty. Here's the Nude Light Obsessions. It's nice and light. It has an amazing formula and a beautiful color story. This is definitely one of my all-time favorite Obsessions palettes right here. The Nude Rich Obsessions is a little bit more nighttime. It has some really beautiful burgundy shades, and I really love the way that these colors look on me, plus this palette has an excellent formula. Out of the Nude Obsessions, the medium one is the one that I was the least excited about, but it's also a really beautiful palette with a great formula, and I love these glittery shimmery shades in the middle here. From the Haze collection last year, Khaki Haze was definitely my favorite. I absolutely love the shimmers that came in this palette, and this olive green color is so beautiful, and it is about to be fall, so this is the perfect little Huda Obsessions palette to have for this time of year. Here are the Wild Obsessions palettes which just came out, and these also have a pretty good formula from Huda. My favorite being the Jaguar palette right here with this beautiful cool toned color story that has a couple of pops like the purple here and the olive shimmer shade right there. This palette is lovely. And then the Wild Python palette was the one with the most unique color story. I like that this palette has greens and browns and peach shades and burgundies, and somehow everything works to perfection. This palette is really beautiful, and you can create some very interesting looks with it. I have a 3 looks 1 palette on it if you guys are interested. I really love the looks that I came up with. Okay, last Obsessions palette, the Wild Chameleon palette. I still owe you guys another video with this one, and this has a really nice warm pinky color story with this pop of purple right here. Still haven't done many looks with this one, but I am intrigued to see what looks I can come up with, and the color story is definitely really beautiful. Moving on from the Obsessions palettes, this right here is the Lorac Pro palette. This palette was all the rage in the old YouTube days. Now, I will say it came to my life a little bit late. It came to my life, I would say, around a year ago. So I never had it when it was like very popular and hyped up, and by the time that I got it, I really didn't see anything special about it, because there's so many palettes on the market that look like this now that this almost seems kind of boring, although I know that this was like all the rave back in the day, you know? So I did use it a couple of times. Honestly, I was not impressed with the formula. The Lorac formula seems to be extremely dusty, and so not a palette that I loved, and this will be a palette that I am decluttering. I totally forgot that I had these Obsessions as well from Huda. These are in the older packaging, the cardboard packaging that she doesn't make anymore. This one I believe was my first Huda Beauty Obsessions palette ever right here, with these beautiful vibrant colors. I made a video using this palette at the beginning of my YouTube channel, and it got quite a bit of views, which I was so impressed by. So this Huda Beauty Obsessions palette just holds a special place in my heart. I also would need it for a rankings video, and I'm keeping it. Here is the Gemstone Obsessions. This one would be one that I would be decluttering if I wasn't making that video, just because it's all shimmers, and I already have these shimmers or similar colors to these repeated in my collection a bunch of times. Okay, here I have some Kaleidos and Odin's Eye palettes, so let's talk about these individually. This one right here is from Kaleidos, and I absolutely love Kaleidos eyeshadow formula. They have amazing formulas, and this is one of my favorite color stories from their palettes, so there is no way I'm getting rid of this. The mattes blend beautifully, the browns are beautiful, and these two duochrome purple shades right here are stunning, so definitely keeping this one. When Kaleidos very kindly sent these palettes my way, I did give away the color stories that I knew I wasn't going to get as much use out of, so I only have 2 to show you, 2 that I'm keeping because I gave away the other ones. And so this one right here is the Sashimi City palette, which I am obsessed with. This color right here, it crumbled and fell, and I put it back together because it is such a lovely shimmer shade. Plus I love these types of like warm nudes right here. This 6-pan Kaleidos palette is highly recommended. Let's get into some Odin's Eye palettes next. Okay, here we have these Cold Mini eyeshadow palette, and this is what the shades look like on the inside. I really love the Odin's Eye formula, but I don't really see myself getting a ton of use out of this palette, mainly because I would have to be thinking about specific shades to grab from here, since this palette doesn't really have matte shades that I would be combining with these. Oh my god, this color is beautiful. Wow, that is a really pretty shimmer right there. But I am decluttering this palette. Okay, next we have this Verdani mini eyeshadow palette. This is what it looks like on the inside. Absolutely stunning, earthy toned shades. However, I don't see myself reaching for this one all that often either. I don't think I've ever even touched this one. It looks brand new. So I'm going to give it away to a friend or family member, and that way they can love it better than I will here at my household. Let's keep going. This is the Alva 2 Mini Forest palette. Now here is a beautiful, beautiful color story. This one I do think I'm keeping. I love that shimmer, love these tones in the middle, love the matte shades that come in this one. So I do think that this is something that I'm going to be keeping. Here is the Jord, I guess, JRD palette. This is a pretty dark and grungy color story. I don't think I'm going to be reaching for this one all that often. So I am going to declutter this one because I think it could go to a better home where it's a little bit more loved than at my house. Here's the Alva 2 mini palette. This one has some beautiful blue shades and warm tone shades. Now, the one color I really like about this one is this one in the center, but I don't think that I should keep it just because of the one shade, and I don't really see myself getting a lot of use out of these blues or these warm tones here, so I am going to declutter this one. Another one from that same collection. This one's got fun purples and pinks and browns, so this is one that I think I want to keep for now and maybe get some use out of because it doesn't look like I've ever touched it. Okay, so these two right here I am definitely keeping. Let's talk about my Natasha Denona mini palette collection right here. I have 5. These right here are the Mini Love and the Mini Star palette from Natasha Denona, and these I could say are my favorite mini palettes from Natasha. I really love the combination of colors that these have. I think the most wearable and versatile one is definitely the Mini Star palette. I love every single shade that comes in here, so obviously I'm keeping this. And then if you like rosy tones and burgundy shades, the Mini Love palette is beautiful. Every single shade in here is absolutely spectacular. This shimmer here, to die for. It's so good. Then we have the Mini Zendo and the Mini Xenon palette right over here. The Mini Xenon palette is the newest one in my collection, and it's a really good color story that surprised me and like made me step out of my comfort zone. So keeping that one. I'm also going to be keeping my Mini Zendo. I love the shimmers in this one and the mattes. Everything about this palette I absolutely love. Mine came broken and I never fixed it or replaced it or anything because I can use it like this. It's not a big deal. And if I had tried to get an exchange, this palette would just have ended up on the trash, and I can absolutely use it the way it came, so I kept it like that. Lastly, we have the Mini Retro palette. This color right here, this beautiful crystal looking shimmer, is definitely my favorite shade in this palette and the reason I am keeping it. So I'm not going to be decluttering any of my Natasha minis. I absolutely love them all, plus I need them for rankings videos. Okay, here we have the Shade and Light palette from Kat Von D, which is now KVD Beauty, but mine still says Kat Von D. Anyways, this palette is a beautiful all matte color story. I am currently not getting too much use out of this one, so I do think I am going to declutter it so that it can go to a home where it could be a little bit more loved than here. So this one I'm getting rid of. Then we have the Urban Decay Born to Run palette. I think this is definitely the best palette Urban Decay has ever come out with. Certainly my favorite. It is extremely versatile. You can use it for virtually anything, and I am keeping it. Plus, to this day, the most watched video on my channel has been my 5 Looks 1 palette with this palette right here, so it holds a very special place in my heart. Then we have the e.l.f. Electric Mood palette. This one I got last month and I have been absolutely loving playing with it. Super versatile, super affordable. The best e.l.f. palette I've ever tried for sure, so I am going to be keeping this one. Okay, here we have this Pure X Barbie palette. These shades are actually really good. The formulas are nice. I like the shimmers. It is a bit of a more basic palette and a color story that I think I have repeated 1,000 times in my collection, so I am going to be decluttering so it can be a little bit more loved elsewhere. Okay, then we have the Milani Gilded Terra palette. This one is a $20 palette I got this year, and I really like the color story in this one. The formula isn't terrible, although the matte shades could be a little bit better, but I am going to be keeping this one for now. And then we have this beautiful Charlotte Tilbury palette right here. Here's the color story of this one, and I'm honestly ashamed to say that I have this palette and I've never used it, and I can't part with it either. So I am going to keep it, and I'm going to set it aside so that I can remind myself to use it soon, because it is a palette that I want to play with. The colors are beautiful. I think I would like it. I just haven't gotten to try it yet. Okay, let's keep going. Let's talk about some more Odin's Eyes. I have some of the bigger palettes right here. Here's the Alva 2 palette. I absolutely love this color story. It is perfect for the spring and summertime, and I don't really have a lot of pastel colors like these in my collection that are that shade, so I am going to be keeping this one. This one here is the Nars palette. It's a lot more dark and grungy and fall. I love this shade. I think it might be the same shade that I liked from that palette I decluttered, so I am going to be keeping this one, and hopefully I get some use out of it this fall. Then I have a highlighter palette right here from them. I have used this one a couple of times, and I don't know, I think I should declutter this one just because I don't see myself using it that often. So I do think I'm going to be giving this one a new home. And then here is the Alva palette. This is hands down my favorite palette, I think, from this collection of Odin's Eye. Absolutely love these mauvey tones with the pops of yellow and the shimmers and the mattes. Everything about this palette, beautiful. I am keeping this one. Then we have this palette right here, also from Odin's Eye. This is from the Saga of Freya, and this one happens to be my favorite palette that came in that collection, so I will be keeping this one. This one's called Tears of Freya. The other two are way back there, so we'll have to get those later. Then I have this palette right here from Kat Von D. This palette I believe has since been discontinued, yet this is a palette that I find essential and I can't get rid of it. And I know that it looks really basic on camera, but every single one of these light shimmer shades has a beautiful undertone. There is a pink, purple, a blue, and a green in here, and so whenever I do any colorful look and I can't find the perfect inner corner shimmer for it, I come to this palette because this palette usually has the perfect inner corner shimmer for any colorful look. So I'm keeping it. Next, let's go through my Charlotte Tilbury palettes, and these is another brand that I collect, that I do rankings video with, and so I'm not really interested in getting rid of any of these. I will show you my top ones and my least favorites. So let's begin by my least favorites. This is right here is the Rebel palette. She actually has a new Rebel palette that is much better that I don't have, but the old Rebel palette, I'm glad she discontinued. Not a color story that I'm a huge fan of, but again, I'm keeping it just for collector's purposes at the moment. And then this one right here is the Glamour Muse. Also another color story that I don't love, mainly because I don't know that that purple goes that well with the rest of the colors in that quad. Just not my favorite combination of colors for some reason. So this would be one that I would declutter, but again, keeping it for future rankings videos and whatnot. I'm about to poke on a touchy subject, but this right here is my favorite quad Charlotte has ever come out with. This is the Fire Rose quad, which she had available for a month and she since discontinued, and it is the best quad she's ever come out with. And then my other favorite is the ever so popular Pillow Talk. It's super basic, but it's so easy to use and I really love the way it looks. The rest of them fall somewhere in the middle. This right here is the Bella Sophia, Walk of No Shame, Dazzling Diamonds, Desert Haze. I think this one's called Pillow Talk Palette of Pops. Then we have the Super Nudes Basic, which she recently re-released and I used in the video with the Nudegasm face palette. And here are my two larger palettes from Charlotte. This one is the Bejeweled Eyes to Hypnotize from holiday last year. Really lovely color story. I honestly haven't used it as much as I thought I would. And my favorite ever, the Pillow Talk Instant Eye Palette. This is another palette that I could just use to death. This is so me, so everyday, so basic, so beautiful. Absolutely love this one. Okay, so let's go through this random assortment right here. Here is the Tartelette palette. This palette is so old. This has been in my collection for way too long. I did really love it at the beginning when I first got it. I thought it was the perfect matte palette to combine with any like shimmer shades, which I kind of stand for, but I haven't used it in so long, it's time for me to say goodbye to this one. At Forest Sight, which is the Raw Beauty Kristi and ColourPop collaboration from last year. I believe this is probably one of my most favorite, if not my most favorite ColourPop palette right here. I absolutely love this one, so I am keeping it. Then we have this Pure Defense Anti-Pollution eyeshadow palette. Here's what it looks like on the inside. It has some really beautiful shimmer shades. These middle row of shimmers right here is stunning, but it's not a palette that I'm getting a ton of use out of, so I think I'm going to give it a better home. I'm going to declutter this one. Then here I have this palette from Charlotte. This is the Glowgasm palette with the 1 bronzer and 3 highlighters. I really like this one. I like the variety of highlighters that come in it, and so I do want to keep it. Okay, let's go through these right here. Here is the cute little Spritz Edit palette from Viseart. This size of palette from Viseart is amazing for traveling, and this is a color story that I quite like. Now I will say I don't think that these are worth the price. I think these are somewhere like around the $40 mark, and they are tiny teeny palettes, so I think that if you find a discount on these small Viseart palettes with discounts, absolutely yes, go ahead and grab it. But I think that they are quite small palettes for how much they originally cost. I am keeping this one though, I really like it. Here's my Backstage eyeshadow palette from Dior. I actually love this one. It has a really nice cool tone mauvey purple color story. I do think that I like this formula and this style of palette from Dior much better than the Dior Quince. I like that they have more color choices, and I don't know, overall I'm just not impressed with the Dior Quince. I like them, but I don't love them, and this right here is a palette that I know I can use a lot more and that it's just more my style. Okay, then this one is from Juvia's Place, the Grays palette. I thought this was a unique color story to my collection and I would be keeping it, but I am already keeping the mini Xenon palette from Natasha, and that color story is better, so I am going to be giving this one a better home. This right here is the Rebel Mints from Juvia. I really loved this one. It is the best mint shades that I've ever tried and super affordable, so I highly recommend it, and I am going to be keeping this one. Here we have the Rebel Honey. I have other colors that I like better that have this type of color story in my collection, so I'm going to be giving this one a better home. And I think I'm going to be doing the same with the Olive palette, or do I want to keep this one? I don't know. I'm going to keep it for now. I think I'll give it another thought, but I think for now I'm going to keep this one. Let's talk about this pile next, starting with the new nudes from Huda. I'm not going to get rid of any of my Huda palettes again for rankings purposes. This one right here though is one of my favorites, so I wouldn't anyways. A really pretty color story, I believe, and one of my favorite palettes from Huda. Then we have the Naughty Nudes that came out last year. I absolutely love this color story, and the shimmers in this palette are amazing. It has this one weird shade right here, but everything else from this palette is absolutely lovely, and the formulas of these shadows are incredible, so I love this one. It's one of my top favorite ones for sure. Then we have Mercury Retrograde, which is my #1 favorite Huda palette she's ever come out with. This color story is absolutely incredible. The jewel tone shimmers in this palette are unbeatable, and I just absolutely love this palette and the way that it looks. Here's the first palette Huda ever came out with. I believe this is the Textured Shadows palette Rose Gold edition. This palette does not have the best formula, but I am keeping it because I need to rank it if I do rankings videos. I don't know, the formula wasn't great, and also mine is super old, so it's probably expired past the point of no return. I am keeping it in my collection again just to reference it every once in a while whenever I need to. Lastly, here is the Huda Desert Dusk palette. I was so obsessed with this palette when it first came out, and right now I have other palettes with similar color stories that I probably like better than this one, but again, just for rankings purposes, to complete my collection and whatnot, this one is staying. Here I have two Alter Ego palettes, the Canyon and the Blooms palettes. I usually give away my Alter Ego palettes as soon as I finish filming with them, just because I usually have the original palette that they are trying to dupe, and I don't need two of the exact same color story in my collection. So as soon as I'm I'm done comparing them and I film with them, I give the dupe away. So this one is a dupe for the Natasha Denona Love palette right here, and I will be sending this one to a better home. And then this one is the dupe for the Natasha Denona Bronze palette. Super beautiful, just like the palette that it was inspired by. So of course I have the original. I'll be decluttering this one. Okay, let's talk about these palettes next. This one here is the Afterglow eyeshadow palette from Nars. It is such a beautiful, warm color story, and I really love the shimmer sparkly shades that Nars has. I don't get a lot of use out of this palette, but I don't think I can part with it yet. So for now, I'm going to keep it. This one is the Wanted palette, which was the first Nars palette I ever had. Again, this one has a couple of those really beautiful glimmery shades, and I have gotten quite a bit of use out of this one, although it doesn't even look it. But this is a really nice color story, and one that I also can't part with at the moment. Here is the Extreme Effects one. This one is from last year. I don't think this one has those glimmery pretty shades. And you know what? I think I'm going to be decluttering this one. I think it needs to go to a more loving home, someone who's going to use it more than I've been using it. I did do a 5 looks 1 palette with this one if you guys have it or want to check it out. It's just that I never reach for it anymore. Then I have these two Viseart palettes right here, which were sent to me very recently by Muse Beauty Pro, and I am going to be keeping both of these. I'm going to be putting them in my makeup kit because I believe that I can get a lot of use out of them that way. This Neutrals palette right here in particular is extremely user-friendly and one that I know that I can use on a lot of different skin tones. Let's do some more Charlotte Tilbury. This Nudegasm palette right here, my current obsession. I love this one. Both of these bronzers right here are lovely and very pigmented. They build up so nicely, and this highlighter is phenomenal. This one's cute too, and I can use it as a blush, but this is not my favorite shade from this palette. But these three right here, to die for. They're so good. And I do keep a lot of my boxes. I don't know why. Here's the Stoned Rose Face and Eye palette. One of my favorite, if not my #1 favorite all-in-one palette from Charlotte. As you can see, you can barely see the letters on mine anymore. I have used this one quite a bit, and whenever I travel anywhere, this is something that I usually like to throw in my makeup bag. Then I have the Instant Look of Love palettes, which came out at the beginning of this year. I need to keep them as of right now, but I probably will declutter one of these in the future. These seem to be all of my Anastasia Beverly Hills palettes right here, which these are palettes that I collect and keep in case new ones come out and I need to compare them, show you swatch comparisons, all of that. So I'm not going to be getting rid of any of these, but I will show you some of my favorites and least favorite ones. First of all, we had an intruder. This right here is my Dose of Color Desi and Katie palettes. This one holds a very special place in my heart. I have made a dent into a couple of these shades, and I know it probably has expired by now, but I don't think I can get rid of it yet. This color story is near perfect, if not perfect. You can do everything with this palette, but it's been discontinued, so let's stop talking about it. Okay, so let's start with some of my top Anastasia palettes. This one here is the Soft Glam. I love this one because it is just so perfect for so many occasions and such a universally beautiful and flattering color story. It is so perfect. I also really love the Amrezy palette. This one is incredible. It's got some really beautiful shimmer shades and some really nice mattes. Barb right here, my favorite shade ever. So beautiful. And then the Anastasia and Jackie Aina palette, also spectacular. Just, look at that packaging. Anyways, really love the shades that come in here as well. A very well-rounded palette, nice colorful shades, but also good neutral matte shades that you can combine with the shimmers. It's a lovely palette through and through. And mine looks brand new because I keep it in its box. Now let's talk about my least favorite ones. Subculture. I can make it work, but I don't feel like making it work most of the time, which is a shame because the color story is actually quite beautiful, but the formulation is a little iffy. And the Carly Bible palette. I'm sorry if you are a Carly Bible stan. I love her too. But this palette to me is nothing special. And so I don't really like it. The rest of my Anastasia palettes fall somewhere in the middle. This one right here is the Prism palette. The Riviera palette, which is a really nice palette if you're trying to get into some color. Modern Renaissance. Norvina. This is a pretty old one. This one's called the Shadow Couture palette. Sultry, which I totally could have claimed as one of my top ones. And the Alyssa Edwards palette right here. So let's keep going. Let me show you my Pat McGrath quads back here. I did a video recently where I ranked my Pat McGrath quads from my least to my most favorite. So if you haven't seen that video yet, definitely check it out. She's currently having an end of summer sale, I believe, in her website. So if you're interested in any of these, check that out as well. Interstellar Icon, Voyeuristic Vixen right here. By the way, I love all of my Pat McGrath quads. I will not be getting rid of any. I'm just showing you guys all of them. Risque Rose, Fleur Fantasia, Ritualistic Rose, the most colorful one of them all, Nocturnal Nirvana. And then the last of the quads is Iconic Illumination. I do have a 6-pan eyeshadow palette from Pat McGrath. I believe this is the only 6-pan I have from her. And this one is Rose Decadence. I will say this is not my favorite palette from Pat McGrath. The only shade I like about this one, that I love about this one, is the center matte shade, but just not my favorite for some reason. This right here is mostly my midi palettes from Natasha Denona. And I do have this Pat McGrath palette down here as well. This is my Celestial Divinity palette from holiday last year, which I absolutely love. This is one of my favorite Pat McGrath palettes. It's been discontinued by now, but this size palette was totally worth it. Smaller pans, lower price point, more shades to choose from. This was a hit. Hopefully for holiday this year she comes up with something similar to this. I think it would be absolutely lovely. So let's talk about the midi palettes from Natasha Denona. Here's the newest one, which is the Retro palettes. This one here is the Zendo one, which I really enjoyed playing with. The Sunrise palette, which is another lovely palette from Natasha. The Glam palette, which is absolutely stunning. Bronze palette, which from the midi ones I think might still be my absolute favorite. And the Love palette, which might be my least favorite one out of all of my Natasha Denona palettes. And of course I'm keeping every single Natasha Denona palette because I need them for, you know, future swatch comparisons and rankings videos, things like that. Plus, you guys know I'm obsessed with Natasha and her formula, so these I think would be in my collection regardless. Okay, let's go through this random pile right here. Does anybody remember the Urban Decay Gwen Stefani collaboration palettes? I think this was the first palette I bought when I first started working at Sephora. I cannot believe how basic this looks to me right now, because back then this was everything. I was obsessed with this palette. This was the bomb, and I really like this packaging. Urban Decay does not do packaging like this anymore. I honestly kind of want to declutter this one just because I don't use it, but at this point it's expired, so I don't know that anyone would get a lot of use out of this one, and it carries sentimental value to me, so I'm keeping it. Here is a super random Z palette with Makeup Geek shadows, Nars, YSL, Marc Jacobs, and Guerlain. I'm getting rid of this. I don't use it. I can probably give it to somebody who might get a bit of use out of this. It's so random, right? Oh my god, my Anastasia glow kit. I was obsessed with this, okay? However, I think it's time to say goodbye. I have too many highlighters. I don't think I'll be needing this one. Somebody else can get better use out of it than me. You guys, my Tati palette. Do you think now that she's back, she'll continue to come out with eyeshadow palettes? Because, dang, this was beautiful. I'm absolutely, of course, keeping this one. I love everything about this palette. I have like 10 looks one palette with this one. I'm not even exaggerating. Just freaking lovely. The glittery shades are a little bit chunkier than I'm used to nowadays. This used to be the bomb back then. Right now, I feel like it's a little chunky, but I think I would still use them. So, yeah, plus the matte shades were really fun in this palette. Okay, here we have the So Jaded palette by Kathleen Lights and Colourpop. This is a beautiful palette. I love all of the shades. The combinations of colors are great. The shimmers, the glitters. Just look at this shade up here called Diamond. Oh my god, it's beautiful. I have a friend that mentioned interest in it, so if she wants it still, I will give it to her. But otherwise, I'm going to be keeping it in my collection. Let's move on to the next pile. Here I have the Pure X Raw Beauty Christie palette. I really did not like the colorful shades in this one at all, minus maybe like the lighter ones like the white and this yellow shade right here, but honestly not my favorite. However, I did really love the more neutral, warm side of this palette. Plus, it is Raw Beauty Christie's first ever collaboration, and I love the packaging, so I can't part ways with this one. Here we have my Harry Potter palettes. This is my Hufflepuff palettes and my Ravenclaw palettes. Nothing Harry Potter can ever be tossed or given away in this household, so of course I'm going to keep these. Anastasia and Nicole Guerrero palettes. I was obsessed with this right here, okay? Obsessed. However, I don't think I'm into highlighter palettes any longer. By the way, did you guys see that Nicole Guerrero is pregnant? I was so happy when I saw that. Anyways, love her. I am going to be giving this one a better home though, because I don't ever reach for it. Another Colourpop palette right here. I don't know if you noticed, but I only buy Colourpop palettes when they're collaborating with my favorite influencers. This one is the I Love Sarai and Colourpop palette, the Through My Eyes palette, and honestly, this might be my favorite Colourpop palette ever. I think I like this one even better than the Raw Beauty Christie one, to be honest. You guys can see by how dirty this one is. I have used it quite a bit. It is a beautiful palette, and I have to keep it. Okay, I had to stop because my foot was cramping, but I am back and we have just this right here left, which right now seems like not much. So let's go through some more Natasha Denona palettes. Like I said, not planning to get rid of any of these, but I'll show you them. Here is my Metropolis palette. You know what? I wish that Miss Natasha Denona would do more palettes like this one with this amount of shades with the smaller pans. I think this palette is quite remarkable, and I think I would like more palettes this size from her in the future. Here is my Triochrome palette, which again, stay tuned to see how you can win a brand new one of these yourself. Circo Loco, which is Natasha's most colorful palette and a beautiful one for sure. And my favorite Natasha Denona palette ever, the gold palette right here. I am begging for more glitter shades like the one that this palette has. We need more glitters from Natasha with this type of formulation for sure. Let's move on to this stack. Here is my Only Wayne palette that I got a couple of months ago. Absolutely love the formula in here and the color story. Everything about this palette is just lovely. And then here's my Dior Birds of a Feather Warm palette. This one right here I loved even better. This is a really lovely palette from that Birds of a Feather collection. I am keeping both for now. And then the House of Sillage mini eyeshadow palette, which I am keeping for now just because it's very, very new to my collection, but I honestly wasn't too impressed with this. Okay, we have some Too Faced, some Urban Decay, and some Juvia's Place in this pile. Here is the Mauves by Juvia's Place, which I think I have to keep mainly because of this beautiful shade at the bottom right here, and I also really love this type of mid-tone nudie shade. This palette is really beautiful, very lovely, and a color story that I love, so I'm keeping it. In comparison, this other Juvia's Place, this one is the Taupes, it gave me nothing. Once you put it on your eyelids, you can't even tell the level of difference between the matte taupey shades in this palette. So this one I am going to give to a better home because I'm a little resentful. My original Naked palette, the first high-end palette I ever bought, and what started my love story with high-end, good quality makeup. I probably will never get rid of this. It is expired because it is a very old palette. I've had it for at least 6 years, maybe even more at this point. Anyways, I'm keeping it and there's nothing you can do about it. I will forever have this busted ass palette. Here's my Naked 3. This one is not too old because I had an older one that I left to my mom in Cuba, and I had gotten another one at work when I worked at Sephora, so I don't think I've ever used it, but I also can't get rid of it. it. This palette has sentimental value. I just can't part ways with this one. Here is the Urban Decay Wild West palette, which I am going to also be keeping for right now. I might get rid of this one next year just because it doesn't really hold sentimental value like the other two, and I don't love it. It's not my favorite, but for right now I need it for end of the year videos because this one did come out in 2021. And then here is my Too Faced Sweet Peach palette, which is the only Too Faced palette in my collection, and it is a beautiful, beautiful palette. I do not see myself getting rid of this one. I don't reach for it that often, but it feels wrong to not have any Too Faced palettes in my collection at all. If I ever need to like reference the formula for anything, I need to have something to do that with, and I really like this Sweet Peach palette, so this one I'm keeping. Let's talk about my big Norvina palettes. This one is the Norvina Volume 1 right here. I swear these palettes are the size of laptops. Her first few palettes just didn't have that great of a formula. She has gotten the formula better with time, and I've only ever used this palette once, so I'm going to pass it on to somebody who might use it more than me. So I am decluttering this one. One that I will not be decluttering is this one right here. This one is the Norvina Volume 4 palette. It has a beautiful color story. I really like this one. I have a 5 Lux 1 palette with it, and I can't part ways with it. It's a really lovely palette, and I'm obsessed with this packaging as well, like the pink tone in the packaging. And then here we have the Norvina Volume 5 palette, which is one of the best eyeshadow releases of this year. This palette is incredible. I love the color story, and it's not going anywhere. I'm keeping it. Here are my Jaclyn Hill and Morphe collaboration palettes. I'm going to be keeping Volume 2. I actually really love this color story. I'm also going to be keeping Volume 1. I love this palette, and I think it is time to pass the vault to somebody else. I never reach for these eyeshadows, and so I think I'm going to give the whole vault away to someone. It has this eyeshadow palette right here. This I think was probably my favorite one. I love this color Ballsy. Ooh, this is perfect for the fall time. Okay, no Patricia, no. Here are some nighttime grungy colors as well, and the warm reddish ones. Bye bye. We only have these two piles left. I'm so excited. I can't wait to finish. Here is this Coral Me Maybe eyeshadow from Essence. These are like $3 and I'm going to be keeping them for reference. Then my Rare Beauty eyeshadow palette right here, I'll also be keeping. I really like the Rare Beauty mattes. Here is the Saga of Freya, the Cat with Golden Cage eyeshadow palette. I really am just too in love with the teals in this one to do anything but keep it, of course. And then this one right here is a 2-in-1, so it has these shades and these shades. I don't see myself reaching for this palette too often, so I do think I'm going to part ways with it and give it to somebody who just will get a bit more use out of it than I will. Plus I already kept the other two from this collection, so I think I'm going to pass this one along. My Artist Couture palette, which I am of course keeping. I really do love the packaging of this one. Here is my Patrick Ta palette, which also an amazing release this year. I'm pretty sure this is going to be like in my top 5 palettes of 2021 for sure. I cannot put this palette down. It's so good. Here I have a couple of Alamar Cosmetics palettes. This is my Reina del Caribe Volume 1 palette. This color right here, El Malecón, to die for. Plus, this is a Cuban makeup brand, so obviously it's staying. And then here is the Spanglish palette, which has the most beautiful color story, also keeping it. I really love this palette. I did a look on Instagram with it recently and just loved it. Okay, then I have this Michaela and Glamlight palette collab. Also keeping it. I love Michaela, and this is my only Glamlight palette. Plus, it has the most beautiful, richly pigmented, colorful color story, so she's staying. Last but not least, some Kaleidos palettes. This is the Escape Pod palette right here. I'm obsessed with Kaleido eyeshadow formulas and shimmers, so I'm keeping this palette. And the Club Nebula palette is the best thing Kaleidos has ever released, hands down. This palette is so incredible. I cannot say enough good things about it. I love it. I think Angie did a fantastic job at picking these colors, and the only reason I don't talk about this palette more is because you guys can't get it anymore, and I feel sad if you don't have it because it's so good. Let me quickly show you kind of everything I kept and everything I got rid of. All of these are the palettes that are staying with me right over here. I have to organize them again by size in order to put them back on the shelf. And these are the palettes that I decluttered, which I think it's a pretty good amount. I knew for a fact that I wasn't gonna get rid of any Huda, Natasha Denona, Charlotte Tilbury, or Pat McGrath palette, because those are my favorite eyeshadow brands and palettes that I like to collect and have for future reference. But out of the rest of the palettes in my collection, I feel like that's a good amount of palettes to declutter. Plus, I wasn't gonna get much use out of them, so I'd rather give them to people who will use them more. Now let's talk about this one right here. What do you have to do to enter the giveaway? Let's make it simple. Make sure you're subscribed and that you give this video a thumbs up. Make sure that you are following me or that you already follow me on Instagram or TikTok, and leave me your username for either app down in a comment. So just say, I'm entering your giveaway, here is my TikTok handle. I'm entering your giveaway, here is my Instagram handle. You know, something like that. So in a couple of weeks, I will go through my comments and select a winner, and I need the username to make sure that the person who wins is following the rules. Yeah, that is all you have to do to enter. I have a big mess to clean up ahead of me right here, so please make sure you give the video a thumbs up before you leave. Make sure you are subscribed to my channel. Let me know what you thought of this declutter down in the comment section, and I will see you guys in the next video. If you stay till the end, I'm going to thank you by giving you a little palette tour. Just put everything back. So of course we have my Mothership palettes down here, which you guys know are the love of my life, and then I organize from tallest to smallest, kind of. So just my Norvina palettes, Jaclyn Hill and Morphe, Kaleidos, Alamar Cosmetics, my Odin's Eye, Natasha Denona, Harry Potter, more Natasha Denona, my Huda palettes, Charlotte Tilbury, the e.l.f. palette, Artist Couture, my Pat McGrath quads. Starting on the second shelf, we have some Juvia's Place, the Milani palette, some Busy Art palettes, my Tower of Obsessions palette. Ideally, this is not how I would want it, but I wanted my palettes to fit all the way across, and so I had to stack them up like that. Then we have my Anastasia palettes, a bunch of random palettes here, like the Nars one, Too Faced, Urban Decay, Natasha Denona minis, more Kaleidos, Odin's Eye, and my Charlotte Tilbury palettes right here. So yeah, woo, finally done. I will see you guys in my next video.